Okay, so today we are going to try to go to Minmus. Okay, so there's a rewarding or somewhat rewarding task contract to get there, and basically all I have to do is gather science data when orbiting the moon. So I'm going to accept this. And if I go to the tracking station, I can see that we have Kerbin here, right? We zoom out, there's the Mun. Zoom out further, and you see Minmus. Now Minmus is substantially farther away from Kerbin than the Mun is. The Mun is about 11.4 million meters, while Minmus is 46.4 million meters. Quite a long distance further. Now, it's actually possible to get to Minmus with the ship that I used to get to, or to rendezvous orbit with the Mun. And it's not that easy to do before you're able to plan to do flight planning, but I've since upgraded my facilities to enable flight planning, so that makes it easier to predict orbital trajectories and all that. So if I go into the vehicle assembly building and load up my Mun flyer, which is what I used to successfully fly by the Mun before I had any flight tracking. This Mun flyer is actually capable of going to Minmus. So let's see, Mun flyer. Where are you? Mun flyer. All right. So this is the Mun flyer. It has 3 stages, and it has a high specific impulse engine on the top stage, which is very important for doing maneuvers deep in space. Now this one, I was reading the KSP wiki, and it just sort of dawned on me that the LVT-30 is not gimbaled, right? So yeah, this Reliant engine doesn't have any gimbals on it. Now, is that important? I'm not 100% sure, because once you're in space, the reaction wheels are good at maneuvering, right? This design is okay, but it suffers from flexing problems during launch, which I think reduces its efficiency somewhat. But I'm not sure how to resolve that problem. Like, I could put struts on, but with this basic configuration, it still can fly into outer space, fly to the Mun, and actually make it to Minmus. So I'm thinking, I could fly by and just do a crew report, keep the crew report, or I could do something a little bit more challenging and actually try to transmit data from Minmus. Now, what I would need for that is a high gain antenna. And let's see here. Communications. The Communotron 16 looks like it can go 31.6 million meters. And let's see, what kind of deep space network do I have? Level 1, level 2, level 3. Not 100% sure. But this HG5 high gain antenna is can communicate up to 100 million meters, even with a level 1 deep space network. So I'm not sure which one I really need. Let's see. Okay, so this tracking station has been upgraded. It's a level 2, so I'm thinking that I can probably get away with a cheaper antenna, maybe just the 16 or the 16S, which is surface mount. Because if it's a level 2 deep space network, it'll communicate up to 158 million meters, which is far beyond Minmus's orbit. So let's just go with that. We can send science data down. Now, there's other things that I have to keep in mind, like, let's see, the fact that transmitting data consumes a lot of battery power. And I only have minimal battery. In fact, if I go into the engineer's report, it'll say it says cannot transmit science, right? Obviously because I don't have an antenna, but if I put an antenna on, like the Koik-Cestone 16S, say I put it here, they'll then say, oh, electric charge required, but not generated, which means that it consumes electric power, but there's no electric power present, right? Or no continuously regenerating source like solar panels. So basically, it's just the existing batteries in the command module and also whatever electric power is generated by the motors. That can dwindle, and it dwindles fast, especially when you're transmitting. So what I would do if I want to do multiple transmissions, like say high above MUN and then, or high above Minmus and then at a low altitude from Minmus, if I wanted to do 2 transmissions and then maybe on top of that keep some data, maybe it'll be better to install some battery packs. So if I go here to electrical, these Z100 rechargeable battery packs hold some extra punch. Now, since I don't have any solar panel there's no way I can recharge these, but they have a built-in charge. So let's see here. What can I do? I can put them on the surface, and I think they'll withstand going up. Make this symmetrical. As long as I don't go too fast through the atmosphere, they'll survive. Okay, so electric charge stored but not generated. So yeah, so basically it's telling me in the engineer's report that these batteries have charge, but there's no way to recharge them, which is fine, because we're only going to do a limited number of transmissions. These stick out sort of, but I don't really feel compelled to put anything over them. I could embed them in these nose cones, but the thing is I have to jettison this stage, so that won't really be useful. I could put them on the capsule, but I don't want them to blow up during re-entry. So I think I'm just going to keep all that stuff there. Now, these rockets, let's see, 75, they're all thrust limited. These back thumper solid fuel boosters, these are just for getting through the thickest part of the atmosphere. And then this liquid motor here is for getting through the thinner part of the atmosphere and getting into orbit around Kerbin, so that I can stage into a transfer orbit towards Minmus. Then this third stage is for liquid, or for further orbiting maneuvers and getting back to Kerbin. So basically, 3 stages, all look like they're in good working order. You'll notice that there's fins. Those fins are there for stability and also control. So this ship is going to go up. It's going to do a gravity turn to minimize the amount of energy needed to get into orbit, because that's really one of the key goals, is because we want to have as much energy as possible to get to Minmus and back. Alright, so now that everything is set up, I can call this the Minmus flyer. Craft that is suited for a Minmus flyby with communication technology. Okay. Alright, so we are ready. Let's launch. Alright, so we're on the launch pad. Let's activate the stability system and go to full throttle and launch. Alright, so we're accelerating fairly slowly. Once we reach 80 meters per second, I'm going to start doing the gravity turn. Right. Gravity turn. Tilt to 80 degrees. And these winglets help. Okay. See, there's some flexion in the fuselage. That's pretty harmless. It may reduce the efficiency somewhat, but it's not affecting the flight trajectory or anything. Okay, so as you can see, these rockets are accelerating me up at a moderate pace, getting through the atmosphere without going too fast. And so now I'm through the thickest part of the atmosphere, 8,000 meters. See that I'm getting up to about 600 meters per second, at about 700 meters per second. Let's see. Yep. Alright, so now my second stage is up, running. So, starting to accelerate a lot, and up to 800 meters per second. Alright. As you can see, this engine has no gimbaling, so I'm starting to drift a little bit. Alright, let's shut down. See our trajectory here. Alright, so we are going up to about 105,000 meters. I want to get that a little higher. Oops. Okay. Get that apoapsis up to about, 140. Okay. So now, getting very close to space. Now there's no drag, we can level out parallel to the surface. Okay. Alright, let's look at our trajectory. Okay, so we need to make this trajectory nice and round. So what I can do, since I've upgraded my facilities, is do some flight planning. So I want to add a maneuver. I want to make this orbit go around the planet. So I'm going to increase my prograde vector, and you can see it requires a certain amount of, I think, specific impulse to do that. Let's see, periapsis. I want the periapsis to at least be, you know, in outer space, so at least 70,000. Alright, that looks fine. So I'm going to need a 1,500 meters per second of increase to make that orbit at this point. So you'll notice that this dotted or dashed orbit is my objective, the green orbit is my actual orbit. So to achieve that, I need to be on target. So my vector is pointed at the blue cross, which is my target. And so once I get there, I'm going to do a burn. That burn is going to be basically a minute long. Okay, let's start the burn. As they recommend, you know, start the burn about halfway through the time. So if it's going to take a minute to do, start it 30 seconds prior. So right now we are widening our orbit, and you'll notice that the delta V on the rocket is less than the needed delta V, so I'm going to have to jettison my second stage to get the full effect. Alright, now let's jettison and let's activate. Okay, so slowly but surely we're getting to the objective. Slowly our orbit is starting to approach the target orbit. Alright, once it gets close, reduce the thrust. Alright. Okay, our actual periapsis is in space, so don't really need to match the delta V exactly. We're still 9.7 meters per second away from it, but I would say, and the program appears to agree with me because there's a green check mark there, so I'm just going to check it, and so that's my orbit. Alright, so now I am orbiting Kerbin, and my apo is 145, periapsis is 83, somewhat eccentric, like it's not a perfect circle, or even close to it, but what matters is that we're in space for the duration. So if I zoom out, I can see that I'm very close to Kerbin. I'm basically in a low Kerbin orbit. But there's the Mun, right? That's the Mun. And then this wider orbit that's much farther out is Minmus. That is our objective. So it might seem like a simple exercise of stretching my orbit out to Minmus to rendezvous with it. Only one problem, however. If you notice, the Mun is more or less coplanar with Kerbin. More or less, right? But Minmus has an inclined orbit. It's very inclined. So first, to even have a hope of intercepting Minmus, we have to match the inclination of its orbit. So how do we do that? Well, now that I have more sophisticated orbital planning available, what I can do is right-click, I think, or left-click Minmus, click Set as Target, and so then that gives me some navigation pointers of nodes. So my ascending and descending nodes, which are basically where my orbit intersects Minmus's orbit, display like 5.9 degrees of inclination. So that means there's a 5.9 degree difference, and you see that sort of. What I want to do is match that. I want that to be 0, so that the tilt matches the tilt of Minmus exactly. So what I'm going to do is add a maneuver at this ascending node, and I'm going to change the inclination. So if I do this, what happens? Wrong way. Notice the inclination is changing. I want to change in the other way. And I can monitor how much it's changing by, let's see here, by looking at my ascending node. Ascending node's 3.8 degrees, that's already less of a difference. 2.8, 1.8, 0.1. So basically that's almost like 0. Alright, now that's almost exactly matched. So all that requires is a 220.5 meter per second delta V, basically pointed what direction? That's the target. So basically I'm pointed downward. So when I do this burn, which is coming up very soon, I'm going to change the inclination of my orbit by doing some thrusting downward. So let's see here. Once the node reaches T-6, which is coming up very soon, I'm going to do a full thrust burn. Now, so you can see I'm starting to approach it. I'm going to keep myself oriented to that target. Okay. I need to be very accurate here. Alright, 2.2 meters. Can I get better? Alright. Closer I am, the easier it's going to be to do intercepting orbital maneuvers. So basically, yeah, I pretty much have matched the inclination. So this inclination is exactly matched now with that of Minmus. So from that point, I can then do more sophisticated orbital maneuvers. I can choose to add another burn or maneuver to bring myself in either co-orbital plane, like close to Minmus, or actually intersecting it. So you notice that in between Minmus and me is the Mun, and that can pose problems with some maneuvers because the Mun obviously has gravitational influence. So I have to design my maneuver so that the Mun doesn't interfere with it, and that's possible. So if I plan another maneuver at this node, let's see, add a maneuver. Say I want to, let's see, actually, why don't I do it at the descending node over on the opposite side, because I want to adjust my apoapsis outward, right? I want to make that part swing outward so that I can intersect with Minmus. Now, you'll notice that it's going to be quite a distance. So this might not work at first, but we'll see. So let's expand my, increase my prograde vector here. So increasing the prograde vector causes the orbit to become more and more and more elliptical. So as I expand it outward, you'll notice that, say if I were to leave it here, there would be interactions with the Mun. So I could actually use this particular orbit, if I didn't change anything, to intersect or intercept with the Mun. Enter an orbit with the Mun, but I don't want to do that. I want to intercept Minmus. So let's expand this out further. Okay, so if I just left that like that, then I would actually be flung out of the system. I could actually use this, say, to go on an escape trajectory, say if I wanted to go to another planet. But I don't want to do that. I just want to go to Minmus, so let's expand this out further. Okay. Right. Okay, so now this is let's see. That's totally not what I want, right? It's because Minmus is influencing that orbit. That's why it's swinging in such a wildly inclined direction. Or sorry, the Mun is influencing the orbit. So what I can do is change the position of the burn on the orbit. See if that helps. Let's see. Alright, so now you see that it wildly swings out, and it actually reaches a point where it where I near Minmus. Now you'll notice that there are these two indicators here, these notches, and they show that my target position at closest approach as well as my closest approach. So basically that's as close as we will get, and that's like millions of meters apart. So I need to do better than that, right? So let's see, if I decrease my prograde vector, what will happen? Okay, so what's that? So that's the closest approach, right? Somehow, I don't believe that, okay. Separation, 92,000 kilometers. That's very far. Let's see here, I'm going to increase this a little. Yeah, see. You notice that it's almost the opposite side of the orbit. So I want to get these two notches, the closest approach and the target position at closest approach, as close together as possible. So that way we can actually intercept. So I reduce my apo. Let's see. Okay. Alright, so that's actually much closer, isn't it? Only 3,000 meters of separation. Now, Minmus is a very small moon. It's almost like an asteroid. So, like if I was 3,000 meters from the Mun, right, or 3,000 kilometers from the Mun, I would actually be able to enter a capture orbit, I think. Not so with Minmus. Minmus, you need to be pretty close, and 3,000 is not going to cut it. So we need to get a little bit closer here. Aha. So let's see, if what this is telling me, it seems, is that, let's see here. I can enter an escape trajectory, right? If I actually follow this orbit, will I enter a will I enter an orbit with Minmus, or will I escape from it? Let's see. One of the problems is that it's kind of difficult to intercept an object accurately with such a strongly elliptical orbit. But one of the reasons why I'm trying this elliptical orbit is because the delta V is very low. Only 903 meters per second, which is pretty, it's pretty doable. Since I have about 1777 meters per second available worth of fuel. So, let's see if I adjust this further, right? Okay. Let's see here. Alright, so the Minmus encounter closest approach is 2,247 kilometers. I just want to make sure that that is going to actually be an encounter. Okay. Well, let's try it out, right? Let's see. That requires a 900 meters per second. Alright. Alright, so basically 900 meter per second delta V. And it's going to be done... Let's see, where is this maneuver going to be done? On the way towards the apoapsis of my current orbit. Alright, so right now I'm in my low Kerbin orbit, which is the staging orbit, and I'm just orbiting in a low, sort of a low altitude position. So I'm eventually going to have to position my spacecraft in the proper vector to alter my orbit to intercept with Minmus. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and accelerate to that maneuver node, which is basically only 11 minutes away. As you can see, the orbital parameters are subtly changing with time. As all the bodies change their positions. Okay, so okay, let's see here. Alright. Yeah. Okay, so there's going to be an encounter. So, let's accelerate to this node. The burn time is 42 seconds, so let's orient ourselves properly. The arrow, blue arrow, is pointing to my target vector, which is close to prograde, but not quite exactly on it. And I should start my burn right now. Alright. Orbit's expanding outward nicely. I have to keep it very accurate. Okay, so it's saying that an 8.2 meter per second delta V is okay, but I want it to be accurate, because I want that. See, that's not enough. I need to be able to intercept Minmus. So let's continue my burn here. Okay, what does my burn look like? Looks like I'm still going to be encountering Minmus, so I think we're good here. And you can see that once my encounter occurs, my periapsis will change because of the influence, the gravitational influence. Now, I don't know why those markers are flashing, but I guess I'll find out once we get further out. You can see that the inclination matches nicely. Basically, I'm set for an intercept with Minmus, and it's going to happen in about 6 days, 2 hours. I've still got 873 meters per second of delta V left, which should be sufficient to do maneuvers. I'm going to reset to a prograde orientation. And so basically, as you can see, I'm flying pretty fast over Kerbin. I'm at like a 2,900 meters per second velocity relative to Kerbin. And I'm going to be departing it. I'm going to be going much farther away, as in millions of meters away. So let's speed up here. As you can see, I'm starting to gradually go higher and higher and higher. I'm no longer in a low Kerbin orbit. Kerbin is starting to slowly get smaller. Let's see here. If I go inside my sort of lonely capsule here, I can see if I can see. I guess Kerbin would be a little difficult to see through the window. There's the Mun, by the way. Now you'll notice that the Mun is pretty easy to see. Minmus is very difficult to see until you come within, say, a few million meters of it, because it's much smaller and it's much farther out. It's a pretty hard target to acquire. Alright, so if I continue, you'll see I'm very rapidly leaving any remote semblance of a close orbit with Kerbin. Of course, my periapsis is still going to be very small, so I'm going to get close to Kerbin, but just not that close. You can see how my orbit has become very, very elliptical. To the untrained eye, it would almost seem like an escape trajectory, though it's not. Okay, so you can see that Minmus is approaching. Slowly but surely, it'll sort of intersect with us. And my speed, my orbital speed, gradually slows down, like it's almost a third now of what it was at the periapsis, because as you get closer and closer to the apoapsis, your speed slows down a lot, especially if it's elliptical like this. So, I speed up. See, right now I'm at 50-fold time. If I speed up to, see, 100-fold time, 1,000-fold time, am I going to meet up with Minmus? Do I understand this orbital planning correctly? Let's see. Okay. I'm now about halfway between my apo and periapsis. So you can see that I still have communications with my space center. So my antenna is sufficient to keep me in contact with the space center. We see this very beautiful montage here of Kerbin, the Mun, and the sun of the solar system, whose name I forgot. Let's see, all laid against the backdrop of the galaxy, which actually probably wouldn't be visible if you were looking directly at the sun like this. But it looks cool regardless. Okay. Let's see here. Yeah, keep myself facing that, right? Maybe switch my lights on. No. Cool kind of screenshot here. This is pretty cool. Alright. Let's turn the indicators on. So, we're now at like 376 meters per second. Very, very slow, and it's going to get slower and slower and slower with time. So, we're already at 1 day, but 1 day, 5 hours, but it's going to be 6 days by the time I reach Minmus. So I would imagine that my velocity will slow to a crawl. Let's see. We're warping to 100 full time, and we are crawling 1,000-fold time, still crawling. You can see that green line indicates that there is communication between one of the various deep space network dishes on the world. Okay. Now the question is, will I meet up with Minmus or not? I mean, I am slowing down, right, on an elliptical orbit, getting down to about 235 meters per second. Almost slow enough to open the chute on Kerbin. It looks like we might just intercept. Let's see. Because Minmus is now, it's 274 meters per second. It's going quite a bit faster than me. And this is sped up 1,000-fold. Real life, it's very, very, very slow. Okay. Okay, my Minmus encounter is getting very, very close. So, alright, let's just take a look here. See where we are. We are in, well, we're not in deep space, but you could almost say we are. Look how small Kerbin and the Mun are. They're far away, they're like 43,000 kilometers away. So, and if I look over here, I see Minmus. It's actually visible. So my encounter point is coming up very soon here. Alright, so my encounter is now less than a little bit over 3/4 of an hour away. So let's see what happens now. I want to, if my orbit changes, right. Okay, we're getting very close to the encounter here. I could warp there, but you notice these green balls here? I think those are the encounter points. So I'm getting very close here. Once I encounter, I should be able to enter a trajectory where I can do a burn. Alright. Okay. Now... Okay, so now what I can do is... Let's see here, I can do a planned orbit. So... I can do some planning. So I want to, if I click this line here, I can change my orbital parameters so that I can capture myself into Minmus's orbit. I don't really want to do that, do I? Let's see here. Let me add a maneuver. So let's see. Alright, so I'm just fiddling with the parameters here. Add a maneuver. You'll notice something, right? You'll notice that the orbit starts to round it. Let's see what happens. Alright. That's obviously not working, is it? So I have the maneuver here. If I were to do that, what would happen? This is not as easy as it seems, is it? What I want to do is make it so that, say, here we go. Did you see that? Very briefly, my orbit, see, that's what I want to do. Okay, so I want to, if I enter this, if I do a target burn, right? If I enter, or I burn in the direction of this vector, what will happen is I'll eventually enter into an orbit around Minmus with an APO of 1.2 million meters and a peri of 60 meters, or 60,000 meters. So if I say I want to get really close to Minmus, I can change that so it's like 13,000. Let's see. 1,200 is a little too close. Alright, let's see here. 14,000. I think 12,000 should be 10,000. 8,300. That should be close enough. That's going to get real close, but not so close that I'm crashing into mountains. So that node is going to be approached in 1 hour 57 minutes. So if I just speed up here, see that I'm getting very close to that node, because as I continue in my orbital path, Minmus advances forward along its path, and I slowly approach that maneuver point. And that burn time is very short, only 9 seconds, so it needs to be very accurate and very short. As I get closer and closer, I can zoom in. Okay. Alright, so I should orient my ship in the direction of that vector. Change to stability assist. Okay, so what happened? Wait a second. That's why I can't maneuver. Alright, so I was in fast forward mode, which doesn't allow you to... okay, so I'm actually over time here. I need to do my burn as quickly as possible. Alright, so lowering my delta V here. You can see I'm altering my orbital trajectory rapidly. Speeding it up a little here. I want to enter into some kind of orbit with Minmus. Alright, so it's starting to curl around. That's good. Good. Now I'm in orbit. Do some fine-tuning here. Bring my delta V as low as possible. Alright. Okay, Getting very close. Alright. Okay. Now we are in orbit around Minmus. With a periapsis of around 5,900 meters. Very close to the surface. Let's see here. I think that periapsis might be a little too close. I'm not sure. I don't want to crash into the surface, so I'm going to raise it to about 10,000. So I'm going to do another burn here, and I'm going to increase my periapsis a little bit. Okay. Okay. Make it 11,000 meters. Shouldn't require hardly any thrust. Okay, so that's going to be close to a retrograde position. Alright, and it's going to be in 6 minutes. Alright, so let's widen that periapsis a little bit. Okay. Yeah, 9562 should be fine. Alright, so we're in orbit, and one that should be safely high. So if I go to a prograde vector, and I am in orbit at 11.6 meters per second, crawling. Of course, you don't really need much speed around a world that's so small, because it has such little gravitational influence. And also, I'm at the apo, since this is such a highly elliptical orbit. Alright, so if I go into my crew cabin, I can see that Minmus is right there. And it's still kind of far away. And it's going to take me a whole day to reach the periapsis point. Because it's a very slow orbit. Okay, so yeah, I'm actually 1.2 million kilometers away from Minmus itself. 1.2 million meters, sorry. Now from Kerbin, much farther away. But you can see here that we are orbiting Minmus. So let's speed things up a little bit. You can see that Minmus, as I've increased my time warp to 1000x, Minmus is rotating. And I still have my deep space link to Kerbin, which is good. That's what that green line is. I can still communicate with them and transmit data. About 7 days into the mission. Alright. Let's slow things down to 1x. So now I'm getting close. And you can see that Minmus is a very irregularly, well, it's still spheroidal, but it has a lot of irregular surface features. Because it's so small, it probably doesn't have much gravity, and it looks like it has a lot of ice. In fact, it seems to have, well, like it doesn't look like it's made of primarily silicates. So let's see here. Now my velocity is increased to 70 meters a second, and my altitude is decreasing. Let's see here. As we get closer and closer, 370,000 meters. Closer, 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 closer. All right. You can actually see 3 worlds in this picture now. All right. Alright, now if we were over Kerbin, we would no longer be in space, but since this is an airless world and much smaller regardless, we're still in outer space. Even if we were on the surface, we'd still be on outer space. In outer space, because it's probably too small to hold an atmosphere. The only way it would have an atmosphere is if it was venting, and I don't think it would be venting. Alright, so there don't look to be any geysers or anything. That would be kind of cool. So it looks like it's made out of ice to me. But we'll see here. Let's get closer in. I want to do the crew report really close in. Now, I might have to, I don't think I can do it when I'm at periapsis, because if I'm at periapsis, I'm going to be behind this world, and I'll lose my deep space link. So maybe when I merge from the other side, I can do my transmission. You see that green line? If that green line is broken, I can't communicate. So let's see actually what happens to that green line. Once I get here, let's see. So right now it's on intersecting with that surface. So is it still there? It looks like it's still there. Even though it seems to be passing right through the surface. Maybe it can bounce off the surface a bit, I don't know. Let's see. We're getting very close. Still have a deep space connection. Interesting. Wow. You can see the Mun there, far in the distance. Munset is coming. And it looks like the Mun has set. Okay. We still have a deep space connection. Interesting. And we do not. Okay, so now this deep space connection's gone. You see that question mark, no signal. So I can't transmit the science that I have. I can collect science, but I can't transmit it. So let's see if we can actually reach here, do an experiment, and then transmit it later. Maybe we can do that. Because I want to get some data very close to the surface. So science data from space around Minmus. Let's see here. Alright, so let's grab some data from Minmus. We are getting very close to the periapsis point. As you can see, and the sun is about to set. Then we'll be in total darkness. Alright, we're getting very close. Interesting. So actually, if you measure our above ground level altitude, we're actually only 9,000 meters above the surface. Once I reach this, or start to fly above this mountain here, I'm curious how close I'll be to the surface. I think I'll be quite close. Yeah, see, we're starting to get closer. See here. Yeah, once we reach the periapsis, or maybe a little bit beyond, I think we might actually get close to 8,000 meters. Then we'll increase as we go over this crater here. Very fascinating. Let's see, yeah, we're slowly starting to tick up here. I estimate, yeah, because we're flying above another crater, if you look here, right, and once we fly above this crater here, our above ground level altitude will increase again. So now it's decreasing. What does it look like inside the cockpit? Probably totally, yeah, totally full of Minmus. It's a very irregular world with high mountains. Alright, and yep, as we fly over this crater, our altitude above the surface of the ground increases as expected, and then it'll start to decrease again once we reach the crater rim. I'm going to take a report now. Okay, crew report. Crew report while in space near Minmus. Looking at the surface of Minmus reminds you of a favorite childhood dessert. You are tempted to taste the surface. This implies that it's made of ice, right? That's what it seems like to me. Okay, so let's keep this experiment. And see, the reason why there's no science gain from it is because I already flew by Minmus before. But for the purposes of this mission, I need to capture data in order to get a financial reward. So, oh wow, I'm flying pretty close to the surface here. Only 7.2 kilometers. 7 kilometers, wow. It's really, really close. And you can see the surface of the mountains. All the outlines of the mountains very closely. About as close as you want to get for, because you don't want to fly so low that you risk crashing into mountains or crater rims. This, I would say, is reasonably safe. So, when we emerge from the other side, we should be able to reestablish connection with our deep space network on Kerbin. that green line will reappear. Emerging from the other side. Right now we're on the far side. Batteries are good. Charge has dwindled a little bit. That's because they're powering my command pod. My command pod's electric charge is completely full. Using the reaction wheels and other things takes up electric charge, because those require electric charge to work. Of course, life support and all that. Okay, still got a question mark here, meaning no signal, because Minmus is blocking my path. Okay, we're back online. Looks like we've got signal. So we can choose. I want the signal to get stronger. 80%. Kerbin at Baikonur, which seems like a reference to Baikonur in Kazakhstan, which is an actual ex-Soviet, currently a Russian launch site, which launches the Soyuz capsules. That's pretty cool. Okay, full crew control. Can transmit science, because I have my antenna. Direct connection to Space Center, and it's a ComNet path. Alright, so let's wait for this line to separate a little bit from Minmus. You can see we're starting to get higher above Minmus. I must say, we'll have to have a pretty good, trust physics when flying this close to an object, right? Make sure your trajectory is exact, because otherwise you could easily crash into a mountain. Let's see here. Alright, so let's try and see if we can transmit this. Alright, alright, so I can actually transmit this data that I collected when I was flying very low above the lake beds. Okay, so let's transmit. Okay. The data was received, so it was transmitted. So, science data from space around Minmus. That objective has been completed. Alright, so how much electric charge has that consumed? You'll notice not too much actually. Like, I've still got a few transmissions left, I think. I want to see if it's possible to transmit or do some analysis flying high above Minmus, because that has separate scientific value. Just like an overview, right? So if I fly to the apoapsis, that might allow me to transmit data high above. For future flights, it might be a good thing to give my Kerbin a little comfort, right? My Kerbal. maybe give him a crew capsule or a cabin that he can sort of like sit down and rest in, instead of being cramped in this tiny capsule for like over a week. That's something we'll figure out for a future mission. And the sun's starting to rise over the edge of Minmus. So, boy, there's a lot of beautiful views in this game, and it's really just a game, right? I mean, this is just a sort of a semi-simulation. Something like this would be really beautiful to see in real life. Imagine, what would this be like? Over like a small icy moon of, say, Jupiter or Saturn, or maybe even Phobos and Deimos over Mars. It's a similar type of experience. Alright, so let's speed things up here and get to the app. Alright, so you can see I'm slowing down to like a very slow speed. You can see like the orbital, my orbit is going very slow, in the amount of time it takes me to go a small distance towards this apoapsis. The Mun has already completed a significant amount of its orbit. And that's true with elliptical orbits in general, or highly elliptical orbits. Like there's, I think Sedna, it has an 11,000 year orbital period, so it takes 11,000 years to orbit. At the apoapsis, it's traveling pretty slow. It has a highly elliptical orbit. So, let's see here. Are we high enough in space above Minmus to take a different type of reading? Gonna get right to the apoapsis. Okay. Alright, so let's do another crew report. Ha! Crew report while in space high over Minmus. Looking at the surface of Minmus reminds you of a favorite childhood dessert. You are tempted to taste the surface. Okay, so the same message, but since I'm in a sort of a faraway overview type of position, there's actual novel science data. So I'm going to transmit this data. And it worked. So that gave me some science. How much did that deplete my batteries? It took about 25 units of battery away. Not too bad. Still got plenty. If you factor in that my electric charge on my command pod is fully charged as well. Alright, so let's see here. I think that's pretty much all the science that we can transmit in this mission that is relevant, or that's going to give us science points. I'm not sure exactly what else. Like if I went into deep space around Kerbin, it wouldn't really yield any more science. I don't think. I think I've already transmitted science from the Mun. Plus, I don't want to get into any complicated orbital interactions with the Mun because I don't have that much fuel left. Right now, what I want to do, I think, is... let's turn my light off here. I want to get out of this orbit And it looks like my my apo is pointed at Kerbin. So what I want to do is get that apo way out so that I can enter into a direct orbital trajectory with Kerbin. And hopefully I have enough delta V for that. So if I add a maneuver to my periapsis here, let's see, I zoom way out, way out. Okay, how much delta V is that going to require? Okay, so we can see that that red means that I do not have enough fuel for it. Alright, so what I want to do is, okay, wait a second. Alright, let's just try this again. Okay, at this point, I want to add a maneuver. And, that's going to put me on a, yeah, so beyond a certain point, I can't really expand my trajectory without it becoming an escape trajectory, right? Because I guess I'm falling out of the gravitational influence of Minmus if I expand my apoapsis past a certain point, because it has so little influence gravitationally to begin with. So what I could do is make it so that I'm co-orbital with, so I'm directly orbiting Kerbin, right? So escape out of my orbit with Minmus, and then directly orbit Kerbin. Then I can reduce my periapsis around Kerbin to the point where I'm on a trajectory where I'm re-entering Kerbin's atmosphere at the periapsis. So, let's see here. If I add a maneuver here, what will happen? Let's see. So, notice something? If I add a maneuver there, I break out of Minmus, right? Orbit, or out of orbit with Minmus, and I start to have a new apo and peri with Kerbin. So I don't want it to take forever to get to Kerbin, however. So let's see here. See what if I can do this. You'll notice this doesn't actually require much delta V. So, see here. I have about, how much? 633 meters per second. So this delta V is like 217. Doesn't require much. Alright, so what I want to do is make it so that the peri gets to about 25 kilometers. Okay, so yeah, that's fine. 28,000 meters should be fine. So that rearranges my orbit so that I'm directly orbiting Kerbin, and my periapsis is below the surface or the top of the atmosphere. Basically a re-entry trajectory. to do that, I'm going to have to maneuver. Well, I guess I could do it right now. Just do a prograde burn. Alright, so turn off the stability assist. Since I'm close to it anyway, I'm just going to do the burn right now. Okay. Whoops. Okay. Alright. Gotta keep my ship oriented on the target. Alright. So what's our orbit look like? Okay. Parry is still pretty high. I want that parry to get real close. Now 900,000, 800,000, 700,000. Okay. 300,000, 200,000, 100. Alright. Perfect. Alright, so it's going to be a 22-kilometer periapsis. A very, very elliptical orbit. Okay. Maybe a little bit steep, huh? Maybe we want to make it more like 25. So, let's see here. X out of that. Okay, so if we... $28,000 at 28,000 should be fine, or 25,000, whatever it is. 28,000, yeah. Okay, so just a little bit of an adjustment burn there. Then I'm going to be coming up. Let's see. Okay. Why can't I just do it now? Let's just do it now. Alright, so there's my target. It's sort of a retro burn. Gonna make that orbit a little bit nicer. There. Alright. We're on course. We're getting very close to the Minmus escape. Basically, farewell to Minmus here. And we're heading back to Kerbin. On an elliptical trajectory, matched with my inclination. With Kerbin right there. Far, far away for now, but let's see, basically over a week. So I accelerate my time. Now I'm like at 100x. $1,000x. My Minmus escape is very very soon. Okay. And getting very close to the Minmus escape point. Alright. And we've escaped. So now we're in our new orbit. We are going to arrive roughly in 7 days, 1 hour, 25 minutes. A little bit longer than that, but not really by much. Most of the time will be spent accelerating, getting faster and faster after going through this very slow part of the orbit. So, let's see here. There's Minmus, and there's the Mun and Kerbin. I speed my time up. You can see that Minmus is getting farther and farther away, slowly but surely. I'm at a crawl here, only 83 meters per second, but that's speeding up. Minmus is getting very tiny, and soon it will be hard to see at all. Let's see. Okay. You can see Minmus is getting very difficult to distinguish from the stars. It's right there, and it's basically now hard to distinguish. Okay. So now, see how much of our electric charge is remaining. Still a reasonable amount. Let's see here. Getting through a very slow part of the orbit. Now I'm sped up about 1,000-fold. You can see Mun making its orbit, and you can see that Kerbin is slowly but surely getting larger. And our orbital speed is gradually increasing. Okay, the Mun is getting closer, and I don't think it will interfere with our course, because it's traveling farther away from us now. Oops. Sped up a little too much there. But we can see now that I'm actually I'm closer to Kerbin than the Mun is. So, interesting. Almost like a Kerbal eclipse. I think as I complete my orbit, let's see, will Kerbin eclipse the sun? Let's see. Looks like it might. To think, only a little while ago, 7 million meters was like, wow, that's way out there. Not really that far anymore. Alright. So, you can see our orbital speed has increased a lot. Now it's like 800 meters per second. And it will go up and up and up and up. Okay. Alright. Man, what a view from the office. Okay. We are now about 4,300 kilometers. Let's see. Speeding up. I would say once we get to like about 2,000 kilometers, I would jettison this stage so it doesn't interfere with re-entry. It's cool that we still have, 409 meters per second left in the engine. Could have done more with it, but at this point, I think it's done its job of getting us to an orbit around Minmus and back. See, that's how far Minmus has proceeded down its orbit since we escaped its orbital or its gravitational influence. All right. Now, speeding up, and my speed is increasing greatly. Since we're on a re-entry trajectory, I don't feel guilty about jettisoning this upper stage here. It's gonna burn up in the atmosphere. So right now, I'm going to jettison it. Okay. There. Bye-bye. And then I can continue this prograde orientation for a little while. But eventually I'm going to have to orient myself retrograde so that the heat shield will face the atmosphere. Okay, we're at 50-fold speed here. Slow down a little bit. Alright. Getting close. Now, as you may have remembered from previous missions, like the Mun flyby mission, I've actually attached an extra heat shield to the bottom of this capsule because the re-entry speed on this highly elliptical orbit is very fast, so you need very good protection to not burn up in the atmosphere. Because if you just use the capsule's built-in heat shield, your capsule will disintegrate upon re-entry. Because we're already at 1980 meters per second, and by the time we hit this periapsis, might be pushing 3,000, which is way too fast for the built-in heat shield upon re-entry. So let's see here. Soon we will be under 1,000 K. Speeding it up. Slowly but surely, we're getting there. Okay. We're at about 10-fold time here. Slow down. Okay. Can go ahead and take some final views here. The galaxy. Kerbin. Prior to re-entry. Alright, so at this point I'm going to orient it retrograde. So now the heat shield will face the atmosphere upon re-entry. Alright, and then face Kerbin. Alright. Getting close. We're not getting warm yet because we're still far above the atmosphere. We're still very comfortably in outer space. But that will soon change. Because we're only 4 minutes away from the periapsis, which is like 29,000 meters, well within the atmosphere. So it looks like I'm going to re-enter. Probably pretty far away from the space center, but that's okay. How many days has this taken? 18 days? Quite a long time to be sitting in a chair, but this guy's still pretty happy. Alright, so I'm at like 2,900, very high speed. We'll probably might actually reach 3 kilometers per second. You can see the, I guess you could call that the corona, the atmosphere above the surface of Kerbin being illuminated by the sunlight. Yep, we're well above 3 kilometers per second. You can see that crater there. It looks like a very ancient crater. on the surface. See here. Change to the free camera. And as you can see, literally we're getting closer and closer to the surface from this crew capsule view. See us flying over land at like tremendously high rate of speed. Almost 3.2 kilometers per second. All right. Okay. Let's see here. Our ablator is rapidly diminishing. We're still increasing in speed as we enter the atmosphere. Our speed looks like it's going to peak at about 3251 or so. Yep, 3251.4. Now we're slowing down. And you can see behind me, my debris is basically blowing up. That's that upper stage. Basically incinerating upon re-entry. Still well above 3 kilometers per second. Right now we've dipped below it. Ablator, gone through about 25 units of ablator. Started out with 100. I think we'll probably go through about 33 units, maybe a little more. Okay. Jebediah looks cool as a cucumber. Slowing down to a pretty reasonable re-entry speed now. Pretty soon we're going to be slow enough that we're not like a flaming meteor in the sky. Actually went through over 40 units of ablator. Okay. And now we're at 1,000 meters per second and falling. Looks like we're going to land in the highlands. if I have landed here before, maybe. It's pretty far away, not quite halfway around the world, but pretty far away. Oh yeah, I'm going to make it so that this parachute opens at about 2,000 meters. Okay, so I'm going to pop the parachute about once my deceleration starts to decrease. Okay, getting very close. Alright. And there's my debris colliding with the surface. I'm gonna pop this, drogue shoot, or wait for it to fully deploy at 2,000. Alright. Alright. Okay. Looks like we're over an arid, high altitude arid region. Our AGL is about 1,200 meters. It looks like it's about 500 meters above sea level. Let's see here. I've sped up to about 4x time. Okay. Alright. Speed up again. Alright. Soon we will land. You see the shadow approaching there. And we've landed. So, any additional science from landing in this region? Ah, there is. Crew report from Kerbin's Deserts. You record the crew's assessment of the situation. Yeah, get a little bit of science from landing in this area that I have either not landed before or have not collected data from before. So let's keep this experiment. So, looks like our mission's accomplished. Going to recover my vessel. Okay, so crew report from Kerbin's Deserts. So this is just the science that I've recovered, not the science that I transmitted. So basically I got 1.5 science from the crew report from Kerbin's Deserts, my landing site, and then 3.3 science from recovery of the vessel returned from an orbit around Minmus. So got a little bit of science from orbiting Minmus and coming back. Okay, so my parts, my Mark 1 command pod, parachute, heat shield, a blader, all that stuff, miscellaneous stuff. Very little in recovered parts because most of it was jettisoned prior to re-entry. But what was more important was the accomplishing the mission and transmitting the science remotely. So let's see here. My crew, Jebediah, no XP gain, probably because he already orbited Minmus before, but other than that, I'd say, let's see here, the mission has been completed, and if I go into mission control, yeah, archives. So I look here. Science data from space around Minmus. I accomplished that mission. 50,000 credits, 3 science, and of course the additional science from the transmission which shows up here. Alright. That was from Goliath National Products. Okay. Well, I've got like tons of science, tons of funds, some extra reputation, so I need to spend that on probably upgrading one of these facilities. I can either upgrade my launch pad, let's see, vessel size and weight. I can upgrade my mission control to allow for more contracts. Let's see, maybe more astronauts. Maybe increase my research science. It's also for EVA samples, which actually seems like a good idea, right? So I want to be able to land on, say, the Mun and get some surface samples. Do some EVAs, right? So you need to do that, upgrade for that. So I think I'm probably going to do that, and then upgrade the astronaut complex. So if you upgrade, you can perform EVAs. I think I'm going to just do that right now. Upgrade the astronaut complex. Okay. So and then if I upgrade this, which is 450,000, which is a lot, I can collect surface samples. But the fact that I can do EVAs now means that I can also probably get more science that way. So that's a big step up. Alright, well, hope you enjoyed this, cast. It was rather long, but went through all the details of a Minmus flyby. Near future, I'm going to do a landing probably on the Mun and eventually Minmus as well.